Okay, let's talk about something we've all been through, the final exam. But what if that whole idea is just outdated? Today, we're diving deep into alternative assessment. It's this huge shift happening in education, moving away from that one-and-done, high-stress test to totally rethinking how we measure what someone's actually learned.
I mean, you've probably asked yourself this, right? Maybe cramming late at night. You spend a whole year digging into a subject, and then it all comes down to a single 2-hour test? Does that really capture everything? Well, the research we're looking at today says absolutely not, and it points to a much, much better way.
So this really sets up a tale of two different worlds, doesn't it? In one corner, you've got the traditional test. It's a one-time thing, it's standardized, and it's all about what you can remember on the spot. But in the other corner, you have alternative assessment. This is an ongoing process, it's personal, and it's focused on what you can do with what you know. It's a move away from that one-size-fits-all approach to something that actually sees the whole picture. All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down today. First, we'll look at the trouble with old-school testing. Then, we'll get into this big idea of assessment for learning. We'll see 3 cool methods in action, check out the results, talk about the real-world challenges, and wrap up with what this all means for the future of grades. Okay, so why is this shift even happening? Well, to get it, we've got to look at what's not working. Classrooms today are all about teaching problem solving, creativity, real-world stuff. And the traditional test, it just hasn't kept up. A lot of recent research shows that these tests are pretty bad at capturing the complex skills students are actually building. So what's the big alternative? It all comes down to this really powerful idea called assessment for learning. And this is a total paradigm shift. We're moving from assessment that just measures learning at the end to assessment that's designed to improve learning while it's still happening. Yeah, assessment for learning, people call it AFL for short. It's not some final boss at the end of the level. Think of it more like it's woven right into the fabric of teaching itself. The whole point is to have this constant stream of feedback that helps guide students day by day. It's about building knowledge together, not just slapping a grade on it at the very end. And this quote from back in 2017, it just nails the whole idea. Munoz Restrepo said that when assessment is used for learning, it stops being a test and starts being a guide. It turns what used to be a final judgment into an actual ongoing conversation between the student and the teacher. Huge difference. Okay, so that's the big idea. But what does it actually look like in a classroom? Boots on the ground. Well, the research points to 3 really powerful methods: portfolios, projects, and something called formative feedback. So, first up, portfolios. And I love this one. Don't think of it as a single snapshot. It's more like a documentary of a student's entire learning journey. It's this collection of their work over time. You see the growth, the revisions, the aha moments. And studies show this is huge for boosting motivation because students can literally see how far they've come. All right, number 2 is projects. And this is where things get really fun and really real. Instead of just bubbling in answers, students get to tackle messy, complex, real-world problems. And what's so great about this is that it doesn't just measure what you know, it measures what you can actually do with that knowledge out in the wild. And the third piece of the puzzle is formative assessment. And honestly, this is kind of the glue that holds it all together. It's that continuous, low-stakes check-in, the quick quizzes, the class discussions, the little reflections. This gives teachers real-time info to tweak their teaching on the fly, and it gives students feedback they can use right now, not a month later when the test comes back. Okay, so we've got the theory and we've got the methods. Sounds good, right? But does it actually work? Let's dig into the results because the evidence is pretty interesting.
And yeah, the data is pretty compelling. There was this one study from 2011 that looked at using portfolios for writing. It found a direct positive effect on student skills. But here's the other part that's just as important. Almost every single student said they were satisfied with this way of being assessed. They actually liked it.
And that satisfaction, it connects to another massive finding that you see over and over again in the research. Motivation and engagement go through the roof. It's pretty simple, really. When assessment stops being something that's done to you and starts being a process you're a part of, you get way more invested in your own learning. A more recent study, this one from 2021, really drills down into why this works so well. It found that when students are involved in their own self-assessment, it plays a vital role, that's the study's words, in boosting their motivation. They take ownership, and that ownership is directly linked to better results, especially for tricky skills like learning a new language.
Okay, let's be real for a second. This all sounds fantastic in a research paper, right? But what does it actually take to make this switch happen in a real classroom, with budgets and limited time and all that?
And the research is super honest about the hurdles. They are not small. This is not some easy flip-a-switch solution. We're talking about a much bigger workload for teachers, a real need for ongoing training, not always having the right resources. And yeah, the very valid concern of how do we keep this objective? These are the real-world problems you have to solve.
This really breaks it down into a classic cost-benefit situation. So what are the benefits? We're talking deeper learning, way higher motivation. Awesome. But what's the cost? It takes a ton more time, and it's a lot harder to just slap a single number on these complex skills. At the end of the day, it's a trade-off, right? Efficiency versus depth.
So how do you actually manage that trade-off? Well, recent research lays out a pretty clear 4-step game plan. Step 1, you've got to invest in training for teachers. Step 2, get students involved in their own assessment process. 3, use technology to make all this feedback and tracking a little easier. And then, the big one, number 4, you have to actually adjust the larger policies to ease up on the pressure from those big standardized tests.
And all of this leads us right to our final big picture idea. What is the future of the grade? Because this whole shift, it's not just about swapping out a test for a project. It's about totally redefining what we even count as success in school.
At its core, this is a change in philosophy. The goal is shifting from what can a student remember to what can a student do? What can they create? This is about preparing people for the real world, for their future lives and careers, not just cramming for the next exam.
So that leaves us with this one last kind of mind-blowing thought to chew on. These alternative methods, they don't just give us a better picture of what a student can do, they actually build the skills we say we want, like creativity and critical thinking. So the real question becomes, if we change how we grade, could we fundamentally change and maybe even expand what we think of as student potential itself?